Hi guys, and welcome to my basic tutorial for animating with 3ds Max for UDK. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you the basics of getting your animations from 3ds Max to UDK. This is the UT3 male rig. If I hide the model, you'll be able to see the biped underneath, which is used to actually animate with. Down here is the timeline. On the timeline you can see these black boxes. These are keyframes. As I move along the timeline, we blend between keyframes. Each body part has its own set of keyframes. One thing to remember throughout all of this is that whilst we are animating the biped, we are actually animating the bones. If I hide the biped, you can see some of the bones underneath. The bones are these yellow things. If you look in the timeline bar, you'll see they have no keyframes. We'll be dealing with this later in the tutorial. Here I've posed the model into a basic pose just to get us started. Now to actually animate, I'm going to have to hide the model itself so that we can see the biped underneath easily. Now one thing to notice is that I've turned off display children just to allow me to see things easier. Now one really important thing to remember is to turn on auto key. Now whenever I move anything on the scene, it will create a key for it in my timeline. If I don't turn this on, I could lose a lot of work. Now if I select this hand and move it, you should be able to see down in the timeline bar that it will create a keyframe wherever the timeline slider is currently at. Now I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to animate at this point, as soon as this is just a tutorial animation, just to show off some stuff. I think I'm going to go for something like a wave, so point the hand up like this. And maybe move up a finger. Now, if I move back along the timeline, you'll see it's created frames between my two poses. These are called blend frames. If I play the animation, it will play my blend frames. Now, the motion's a bit too quick, so I'm going to move and drag this keyframe further along, and as you can see, we've got a slightly longer motion now. It takes slightly longer to get there. Now this isn't actually an animation tutorial, so I'm going to skip forward a bit. I've made my animation slightly more complicated, just to allow me to show off some things. If I play the animation, you'll see I've added some extra motion for the other arm, and made my spine twist a bit. Now one thing I do want to show off is a couple of things you might miss with biped. If I go up to the motion toolbar with the biped bone selected, you'll see I have a lot of options down here. Now if you open your keyframe tools, you'll see all sorts of little buttons. I'm only going to be explaining two of these today, but if you mouse over them they should give you a basic idea of what they each do. The two I'm going to be dealing with are anchor left and right leg. To give you an explanation of what these two do, I'm going to show you what would happen if I move my biped without turning anchor left and right leg on. I'm going to switch into wireframe and select the shape in the very center of my model, the red one, and move my mesh up and down. Now as you notice, everything moves. Now I don't want that, I want my feet to stay in place. To do that, all I have to do is to turn on anchor left and right leg. Now, when I move the mesh, you'll see that the feet stay exactly where they were. However, I've forgotten to put a keyframe back at the beginning, so it's now overwritten my original thing, so I'm going to have to add another keyframe back there. And I'm going to add a keyframe at the end, just make it a sort of bouncing motion. Now if I add some rotation as well. Now rotation is different from translation. You'll notice that it's yellow, and then we've added these green keyframes on top. That green is for the rotation. So I'm going to add another rotation keyframe back in the middle, just to emphasize my motion. And there we go. Got some motion, and I've got my feet still stuck in place. Go back to smooth and highlight, we can see it better. There we go. And I think that'll do for our purposes for now. So I'm going to use this as the animation. I'm going to port across into UDK. Okay, so I'm going to unhide everything. Now I'm going to select my bones as opposed to my biped. To do this, I'm going to open up my browser using H and select everything with B at the front of it. Nothing with BIP, however. Right, if I turn on wireframe, you should be able to see I've just selected the bones. They're all highlighted. Okay. If I go to the Motion tab and switch it from Parameters to Trajectories, you'll see that it's generated this curve. Now this is actually the path of everything I've animated, and can be very useful when you're animating because you want these curves to be nice and smooth. I'm not going to go into this now because this is not an animation tutorial. Okay, so what are we here for then? We're here for this bit over here, collapsing our motion. Now our end time is 20 because that's how long our animation is. Our samples is 21, that's how many frames are in our animation. Now notice it's not 20, that's because 0 counts as its own frame. If you actually count them, you'll find that it adds up to 21. Okay, so now I'm going to collapse my biped animation onto my bones. And what this will do is add keyframes onto my bones as opposed to just on my biped. Now if I import this to UDK, it will count as an animation. However, before I do this, I need to delete my biped, because otherwise ActorX, the program we use to export, doesn't like it. So if I select all of my biped and delete it, notice we still have our animation despite not having our biped. And if we hide our model, see, only the bones are left. And our red and green, highlighting that we've got translation and we've got rotation keys. Okay. Now we're going to move over to the Far tab, Utilities, and go to More. Under More you'll find ActorX, should be near the top. Right, ActorX is the plugin we use to export our animation. And we need to put an animation file name. I'm just going to call this tutorial animation. Then an animation sequence name, which is the name of the actual motion that we have actually made. So in this case I'm just going to call it wave. And then the animation frames. So in this case it's 0 to 16. Right, now I'm going to click on digest animation. Now I need to load up the animation manager to actually save this file. If I go Animation Manager, we get this. I need to move my animations into my output package by clicking the small move icon. Then I go Save As. I think I'll save it in a new folder. So I'll go create one here. Call it tutorial animation tutorial, something like that. And then name it whatever you like. In this case, tutorial animation. There we go. We've exported our first animation. And this ends the bit in max. We switch over to UDK. This should be your first screen. If you go to the contents browser, we need animation sets. Now open KAnimHuman. In this case, I'm going to open Base Mouse Sword, which is our current MB3 animation set. And you open the animation set editor. Here, you can preview animations, whether these are the ones that you've created or current ones in the actual file itself. So, for example, at the moment we're playing the human male idol. If we go down, this is the backwards crouching. And hoverboard animation. As you can see, we haven't actually deleted any animations yet. Okay, now we need to add our animation in. And to do this, we go up to File, and we go Import PSA. Now find the folder that you've saved your PSA in. And double click it. If everything's worked, you shouldn't get anything at all, but if you scroll down, you'll see there's my wave animation. As I play my animation, ta-da! And there we go, that's it. You can now use this inside of UDK, and that's all there is to it really. Now you just have to learn to animate.